back to my channel. My name is Supasta and Supasta is just a nickname. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I am licensed to practice in Canada and the UK. Just to clarify, I'm currently not working as a clinical pharmacist, but I have been a clinical pharmacist for the majority of my career. So this is probably my most requested video. First of all, thank you so much if it's your first time here. Welcome to the Superstar world. If you are not subscribed, please make sure you do subscribe, share with your friends and family, like the video, comment, let me know what you want to see more of. This video has been requested by so many people on my Instagram. If you aren't following me on Instagram, I would recommend that you do. So I want to talk about the differences between Canadian and UK pharmacy practice. Now, just to clarify, I am going to just specifically speak on retail pharmacy or community pharmacy, mainly because I have not worked in hospital pharmacy in Canada yet, so I don't actually know how things run in that kind of environment. So I'll only be comparing retail pharmacy in Canada versus the UK. Just as a heads up, this video is probably going to come in two parts, and it's probably going to come months apart, essentially because these are things that I'm just picking up just as I'm going along in my journey, and yeah, I think that it's going to be developments over time and things I'm going to see that are quite different as time goes on. The two biggest things that have been, I guess, the most frustrating for me coming from the UK is insurance and brand names. So in Canada, it's nothing like the UK where we have the NHS and everything is essentially billed to the NHS. In Canada, most people probably have private health insurance. If you're elderly or you're under 21, you probably have governmental insurance. But even with governmental insurance or governmental coverage, there are things or drugs that are not covered under the government. So if you're from the UK, you will understand this a lot better. So say, for example, amlodipine is not covered, and say you're 66 years old and amlodipine is not covered by the government, you have to pay for that out of pocket, or the pharmacist has to find an alternative, a drug that's similar that basically is covered. So the government doesn't cover everything. Now, I'm not saying amlodipine isn't covered. Amlodipine is covered, one of the most commonest hypertension or blood pressure drugs, so it is covered. However, there are so many different things that are not covered, and then you have to find alternatives and so on and so forth. That's for somebody who has governmental coverage. There are people who have private insurance and you have to bill their insurance, and sometimes the insurance companies don't cover certain things. So a lot of insurance companies don't cover things for like cosmetic purposes, and then you have to tell the patient, then the patient gets upset. And then there's all these things, you have to override bills, you have to know bill codes, and it's just like, why don't y'all just get an NHS? It's really frustrating, and honestly it can be so annoying sometimes. But one thing that I've learned and been told is that it actually takes years and years of just learning and knowing the system before you actually get it. So it's nothing to do with your clinical understanding or your clinical knowledge. It's more just a thing of practice and knowing. The more you work, the more you see it, etc. So that's one of the things that's quite different, and you have to kind of be prepared for that. It's important to also know that actually for some of your exams, especially probably your jurisprudence exams, you might have to be aware of these things. So you need to kind of know the ODB formulary. So the ODB is Ontario Drug Benefit if you're taking the Ontario exam, obviously. So kind of knowing how those things work, knowing what a co-payment is, and all these kind of names and terms that you don't necessarily learn in any pharmacy school outside of Canada, essentially. So those things can be quite frustrating, especially because you are expected to know them for certain exams. The other thing, and this is probably my biggest one, is brand names. Now in the UK, everything is more or less generic. I mean, we have Lipitor, which everybody knows is atorvastatin, but essentially almost everything here is brand name. Like, what the hell is Norvasc? Norvasc is amlodipine, guys, amlodipine. I don't know why they don't just say amlodipine. And I think the worst thing for me is that physicians actually prescribe with the brand name. So if you're not familiar, you're gonna be like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, what is she actually talking? I don't know what she's talking about. Just things like that just really threw me off in the beginning. Just kind of essentially knowing what drug they're talking about, because everybody goes by brand name. Pantoprazole. I'm like, why don't you just say pantoprazole? It makes it so much easier. It got me really frustrated a lot of times, because it was getting quite annoying that everyone, the patients would be like, oh hey, can I speak to the pharmacist? And then you'll speak to them and they'll be like, so basically I'm on Zimmervane and I'm just like, Zimmervane, you know, and it does get annoying over time. But, you know, again, as you work and as you get used to the system, you kind of start to become familiar with the brand names. Essentially, for me, obviously, when you're doing the exams, you will see the brand names. But because you are so conditioned to the UK names and the generic names, it takes you some time to get used to it. Obviously, some names are the same. So, again, Lipitor is Lipitor, Crestor is Crestor. Here, it's the same. But there are some differences. Again, because brands are made by different companies and so on and so forth, so brand names may vary and that could be quite frustrating. Other things are fax. In Canada, everything is practically fax. Like, where are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Who knows? I mean, I think fax is one of the biggest ways that you can have, I guess, fraudulent prescriptions coming through. In England, this was abolished way before I graduated. I graduated in 2013. So faxes were things that were not really happening. When I got into practice in 2014, I rarely saw a fax prescription. Like, that didn't really happen in my time. But in Canada, this is the way that most things are done. I think in some provinces and in Ontario as well, it's slowly becoming a thing where you have e-prescriptions or e-prescribing, which we've had in the UK for years. Like, we are solid in that area, not to brag, but we are kind of the best. I think essentially that kind of got me a little bit concerned, because I think fax machines are not the most reliable. You can send it to wrong fax numbers, you can get the prescription sent to another pharmacy, and then that pharmacy starts to fill it, and then the patient's like, oh, I wanted it to be this pharmacy, and it just causes a lot of confusion. And I think sometimes it can be quite frustrating as a pharmacist when you are coming from a country that's quite developed in that area, to kind of see that things are a little bit slower in that way. So they do a lot of faxing here in Canada. The doctors will fax you the prescription. Instead of you calling the doctor to say, oh doctor, whatever, there's an issue, you would write the doctor, he or she, a note, and you would fax them the question. Then their assistant or their receptionist would then show it to them, and then they'll fax you the response. It's like going around in circles, honestly. But again, these are areas that essentially can and will, I believe, develop over time, and I think that that's one of the reasons why I would definitely recommend pharmacists from other countries to come and work in Canada, see what it's like, and see where you can be an asset, where you can basically give your skills, your expertise, your knowledge, your understanding, because I think it will definitely help the system overall. In the UK, we have something called the NICE guidelines. NICE guidelines basically govern everywhere in England. They basically tell you what to prescribe, what's first line, what's second line. So, for example, somebody who has heart failure, we know what the first lines are. We know that the patient is going to need an ACE inhibitor, they're going to need a beta blocker, they're going to need, some other things, all these different things. If they have cholesterol issues, all that kind of stuff, they're probably going to need some cholesterol medicines, etc. In Canada, they don't have NICE guidelines, so that means that I don't know what prescribers actually use to prescribe. I think in hospitals they probably have formularies. I think hospitals definitely have formularies. I know that in pharmacy in general in Canada we use the Therapeutic Choices, which is like the CTC, and essentially that is like the DNF. So, you know, if you're looking at depression or something, it will tell you the kind of drugs that you would use and the doses, etc. But there are no formal NICE guidelines like we have in the UK, where NICE guidelines govern everywhere. So, for example, if I had a patient in England who was a female patient, and you know she was quite young or whatever, and the doctor's prescribing a cephalosporin for UTI, I'll be like, why are you not using trimethoprim? Because NICE guidelines tell us that trimethoprim, nitrofurantoin, those are the drugs that we essentially go for. If you're not a pharmacist or a doctor, you might not understand these terms, and I'm only focusing on obviously pharmacy differences, so nothing else in regards to Canada as a whole. So that's quite frustrating, because you kind of have to go back and forth and think, why did they choose that drug? Why didn't they use that drug? And then when you question them, it's like, oh, do you not know that I'm a doctor and I'm a specialist? And they start going off on you, and you're just like, you know what? For me, what I do to cover my back a lot of times is just mention to the doctor, you know, is there a particular reason why you chose this specific one? You know, there are other alternatives that we could potentially try. And if they try to start going off, I'm just like, okay, that's fine. I'll document it. You know, pharmacist made a recommendation to the physician to use so-and-so, and they went with this. And I think that's so important to always document everything that you've done, document the conversations you've had, because again, they're just very kind of free-spirited with their prescribing. In England, we have CCGs, right, which are clinical commissioning groups, and what they prescribe in South East London might be different to what they prescribe in North London, but everything is still within the NICE guidelines, and as a pharmacist in the area, you would know what is prescribed for trimethoprim, for UTIs based on your resistance in the area, all that kind of stuff. So again, it could just be a thing of the fact that I've studied in England and you've kind of grown to know these things, and you're coming to a new place where you haven't grown to know the things or the ways that they run. A couple of other things I've noticed are things like dispensing. So apparently their pharmacy assistants don't actually do any kind of training. So they've got pharmacy technicians who have to be licensed, just as the same in the UK. The pharmacist is obviously licensed. But in the UK, if you're a pharmacy assistant, you've probably done a counter assistant program, especially if you're working for Lloyd's or Boots. You've done some form of structural, practical program that allows you to stand in front of the counter and answer questions and ask questions. But I've heard that many pharmacies in Canada, essentially you can walk in and give them your CV. You could essentially come from anywhere, hand in your resume or CV, and they would take you on, and there's no necessary structural training. That doesn't run in the UK. They will need to know that you've had experience working in other pharmacies. You would have to progressively do some form of counter assistant training. Even if it's just reading the book and doing the little tests and stuff, that kind of happens. The other thing is, people can bring in their prescription. So Mrs. A can bring her prescription to Pharmacy A and have, maybe she has 3 medicines on that prescription. She can have 2 of those medicines dispensed at Pharmacy A and the last medicine on the same prescription dispensed at Pharmacy B. It's so strange because that again does not run in the UK. Now again, the reason why it probably doesn't run in the UK is because of the fact that it's billed as a whole prescription to the NHS, and the NHS then credits the pharmacy that it was dispensed from. But we don't do transfers in the UK. You can't have half your prescription dispensed here and have the other half dispensed elsewhere. That doesn't happen, but it happens very commonly in Canada. People can do transfers. In Canada they have refills, which is like repeat dispensing. But in England, you have to be on the repeat dispensing program. There's actually an RA, which is the physical, authorized prescription. Then you have the RD, which are all they give you the actual physical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many repeats you need. Whereas in Canada, I can write colchicine prescription refill times 4. So I can refill the same prescription times 4, and that patient can basically get their first dispensing from me and get the other 3 or the other 4 at another pharmacy. I mean, it's all crazy, to be honest. It's all mad. So I find that really interesting. I find it interesting as well that prescriptions are different. So in England, again, because of the NHS, essentially we have prescriptions are actually regulated in the sense that you have green prescriptions, which are just your normal FP10s. You have your yellows, which are FP10Ds, your dentals. You have FP10CD for controlled medicines, and on those you would have the specific pin for the number for the prescriber, because those are very tightly regulated. We have prescription controlled drug prescription rules. There's so many things I could talk about in this video, but because I'm trying to make sure that you are understanding the differences that you will and can face when you do move from England to Canada, it's very important to kind of be prepared with that kind of information. Controlled drugs in Canada are different to controlled drugs in England. So morphine in Canada is a narcotic. They call it a straight narcotic. In England, morphine is a controlled drug, Schedule 2. It's just a CD2, controlled drug Schedule 2. In Canada, it's called a straight narcotic. They have controlled drugs 1, controlled drugs 2, and they're all different things. It's crazy. It's just crazy. I'm saying all of this based on my knowledge of working in Ontario. I don't know about the other provinces and how they work, because different provinces have different pharmaceutical and legal rules. Now, you might listen to that and think, oh my God, that's so different. What are the pros then of working in Canada? So I think one of the pros would be, if you are a pharmacist who's newly qualified in England, or you've just finished pharmacy school in England or wherever, if you move to Canada, your starting salary is about 95,000 Canadian dollars. And that's just on average, right? So again, that varies depending on the province you're in, depending on the area you're in, depending on whether you're in the city or outside the city. The starting salary is quite high. 95,000 Canadian dollars is approximately 56,000 pounds. How many British pharmacists actually earn 56,000 pounds on the first day of practice? not many. I mean, unless you work for an independent pharmacy somewhere far up north or something. But for me as an individual, just being transparent, when I first went into hospital pharmacy, now bearing in mind when I first qualified, I worked for Lloyd's Pharmacy for a very long time as a manager, relief manager in different areas. So my salary was not necessarily, I wasn't salaried, I was more kind of like hourly wage. But when I first went into hospital, which was back in 2014, at the end of 2014, the salary then was about £25,000, which is nothing compared to, well, it's half, compared to 56-ish thousand pounds. So if you're just fresh out of pharmacy school and you're looking to make some moolah and get some international experience, then yeah, Canada is a great place to start off because the starting salary is quite nice. Money goes a little bit further here in Canada than it does in the UK. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for that to earn more and so on and so forth. Obviously, if you're an experienced pharmacist, again, money is not too bad. It'll probably be around the same as what you're already on if you are an experienced pharmacist in the UK. If you are someone who is looking to challenge yourself, learn some new things, then again, that's another great pro. Because you're coming from England or somewhere that's maybe more advanced, you have more knowledge and more understanding. You see more things, you have more experience, so you are already ahead. So come to the end of the video, I am going to do a follow-up at some point. I don't really know when, with kind of more differences that I come across. But again, if you have any questions, please email me ori.supasta@gmail.com. If you have any queries, any concerns, I'm more than happy to help you. I am a career coach and I'm more than happy to support you through your journey.